إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. It's nice to see some familiar faces, and I couldn't think of spending my Friday night in the tent in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere, next to a graveyard with better people than you guys. Okay, with that said, we'll make a start, inshallah. When we were discussing what we would speak about today, Usman gave a suggestion of a particular hadith. So my aim was to share the hadith with you and maybe discuss that a little bit. But if we've got some brothers who've got some questions, inshallah, we'll also tackle a few questions. The hadith from the Prophet ﷺ is مثل القلب مثل الريشة تقلبها الرياح بفلاة or كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. And the similitude of the heart is like a feather. تقلبها الرياح, which the winds blow in the wilderness. The Prophet ﷺ spoke in a very unique way, very poetic, even without being a poet. And when you start to analyze and unpack this hadith, let's start from the beginning. The similitude of a heart. Every human has a heart. And generally speaking, we are driven by our heart. Not necessarily driven by the brain. The brain processes. The brain takes the information which the senses is providing. The eyes see, the hands touch, the smell, speech, hearing with ears. That goes to the brain processes it, submits the information to the heart now decides how to act on it. So the heart decides how to act upon it. Qalb, we speak about what the qalb means. But the Prophet ﷺ says that it is like a risha. A risha is a feather. If you look at feather, it's very light. It has no weight. It's made in such a way, due to its structure, that it can easily blow. It can easily blow around. So the heart is like a feather. A feather is also very soft, very tender. So similarly, the heart can be offended very quickly. People can get upset very quickly. Even though the processing and everything is processing well, the emotions get the better of them. The winds that I mentioned, تُقَلِّبُهَا الرِّيَاحُ, is mentioned in a plural. Meaning it's not just one direction and the heart gets blown in. But the riyah, the winds blow in different directions. Yeah, the Prophet ﷺ uses the plural. That is sometimes blowing this way, sometimes blowing that way, sometimes blowing the other way. Which if we go back to the heart, meaning the heart doesn't stay steadfast. The heart is naturally being pushed and directed in different ways. Furthermore, the Prophet ﷺ then says, bifala, that it's in a wilderness. Now, if you have, for example, two buildings, and you have a gap between those two buildings, you'll see that the wind blows through that building in that way. Very rarely does the wind come from this way, very rarely does the wind come from that way, or even that way. It will always blow one way. You'll be used to it. A bit like a kind of a wind tunnel. But when there are no imara, when there are no buildings, no objects, then there's nothing directing the wind at all. There's nothing protecting them. So in the way the Prophet explains it, he explains it in such a way that this heart is such a thing that will continuously be changing. Continuously being changing. So it needs anchorage. It needs anchorage. It needs somehow a support mechanism around it in order to ensure that it goes in a certain direction. Now that one understands what the heart is like. Because it's good to know this, it's very poetic, it's nice, it has good meaning. But the Prophet ﷺ wasn't just one who spoke for no benefit. He spoke in order to advise us and in order for us to understand and act on that knowledge. So once a person knows the manner and the structure of the heart and how it operates, and he knows that the whims and desires are going to push this heart. If I'm in this environment, my heart could get blown in this way. If I'm in that environment, my heart would get blown that way. He knows the effect of the environment. Like the Prophet ﷺ said, that this will be, the winds will continue to blow it. So the environment in which we place our heart, which by existence is our body, is in such an environment which will maintain where we want to go with our heart. Where we want to go with our heart. So this requires some great reflection. Where we are right now, you'll notice as well when we make a dua, what do we say? Ya muqallibal qulub, thabbit qulubana ala dinik. So again, what we're saying here is, oh, the turner of the hearts. Okay? Or turner of the hearts. So Allah SWT has control of our hearts. There's another narration which mentions that, the hearts are bayna isba'ayhim. Allah is the controller of the hearts. What do we ask for Allah? What do we say? Thabbit. Yani, establish, make firm our hearts upon what? Upon your deen. Again, explaining that the nature of the heart is like this feather which is blowing around, being tossed. And if you watch a leaf even out the window, even a leaf has some substance to it that can hold its weight down. Imagine you're looking out the window and there's just a feather there. It's sometimes getting blown here, sometimes getting blown there, sometimes it's going up, sometimes it's going down. It has no direction itself. It is being controlled by its environment. There's no pilot sat inside a feather to direct it to go in a certain direction. It's not like a bird which has its own will, its own desire. It can use the winds to sometimes rise up, sometimes drop down. And if it's coming against the wind, it will slow down until the wind dissipates and then it will move forward. But when it's a feather, it has no will of its own. So in that way, the heart also has no will of its own. That's why sometimes people get frustrated. They say, I understand the deen. I know what I'm going to do. I know what is wrong. And I know what is right. I just can't do it. Yeah, I know why I should avoid, even when it comes to trying to keep a healthy body or trying to maintain, like, when we see these nice cakes there, we know that this is going to put a few calories on. And we want to avoid it, but obviously you walk in, the wind of desire pushes you in that direction, your mouth starts salivating, you start seeing the sweet sugar, and before you know it, you put 2 cakes in your plate. That is the winds which blow around us. These winds are usually made of desires. Sometimes blowing here, sometimes blowing there. But the dua we make, we say, Ya Allah, establish our hearts, meaning give them steadfast upon the deen. That's all I wanted to say, to be honest. 5-10 minutes, but I don't mind taking a few questions. So if there's brothers who got questions about the heart or anything specific, nothing about their medical condition or anything of that nature.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that all into your nerves instead of your heart. Because in this month, Titan already changed up. So whatever we do, we can blame Titan. So instead of, yes, heart you explain well, but I think the nerves, it takes less than a second to make sense. So I think we should work on our nerves.
The heart is the place in which you decide what to do or not to do. It can be influenced by the shaitan, it can be influenced by the nafs, it can be influenced by another human. But it's the heart which then decides what it wants to do. So the heart is the driving force of our actions. Okay, sometimes the heart can, so for example, a person tells us to do something, we don't necessarily act upon that until it reaches the heart reflects over it, and then the heart makes a movement. This is what he's talking about, the winds. The winds are outside, and nafs is one thing which can also influence the person. It's one of many things, absolutely. Any other questions? Yes, brother.
Different question, basically.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be specific to the topic. It can be something general.
It's the seasonal fitra. Zakatul fitra.
Yes.
Is there any restriction on who can't have it in terms of distributing, reaching the recipient of it, of the fitra? Who should we target?
So the brother, I don't know if you can, those might be difficult to hear from over there, is we're talking about zakatul fitr. Zakatul fitr is what we're supposed to give of certain staple foods, half a sa or a sa, depending on what type of staple food it is. And when it gets to the end of the month of Ramadan, as a show of expression of gratitude to Allah, we give zakatul fitr. This doesn't necessarily have to be associated with being baligh. It is for everybody who is living within the house. Usually the father or the husband takes responsibility to fulfill it on behalf of even children. This should be given at the moment we've calculated to be the lowest staple food, around £4.50, but obviously it can go up to £30-40 if you use dates or things of that nature. And that should be given before Eid Salah in order that that's the timing, in order that also the poor people can also have a relatively enjoyable Eid. But the only issue is obviously when we give it, if we give it in the masjid, then normally the masjid will collect that and they will put that away. So that's what Zakat al-Fitr is. Sorry, what was the... Jazakallah khair. So the recipients of Zakat al-Fitr are limited to two types, the fuqara and the masakeen. Zakat is usually to eight types. إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها. You see that in Surah Tawbah, ayat number 60. It gives you the full 8 categories. When it comes to Zakat al-Fitr, a definition is the faqir and the miskeen. They're the two types. People who are poor will have less than nisab. They are the recipients of Zakat al-Fitr. What's the nisab? Nisab is a value that is used to determine rich and poorness based from a Sharia perspective. It's about 612.36 grams of silver, which equates to around £1,000. So if somebody has less than £1,000, then they can receive zakat, and they can also receive zakat al-fitr. I was going to try changing this.
There's a question related to the zakat.
Sorry?
There's a question related to
Sure.
the zakat. So during the era of the Sahaba Kiram, the zakat was used to collect it to help out the needy people and run the government affairs. I'm right. If I'm right, so what is the difference between the zakat and the tax?
Zakat wasn't to run the government affairs. There is no group amongst the 8 groups that are government affairs. Gharimina, fi sabilillah, wabni sabil. There is none which says for the hukuma. The only section which is amilina alayha. So because a Muslim country, like in the time of the Prophet ﷺ and those which came after, and even within the Khilafat and the Sultans, they would dedicate and take some workforce, people who had a normal day job, and say, your task is to collect zakah and distribute it. So they would go out to the farms, take the sheep, because zakat was given in the form of sheep, zakat was given in the form of camels, zakat was given in the form of crops, and they would also, zakat was given in the form of gold and silver. They would collect that, they would bring it to a central depot, and then from the central depot, they would distribute it within the poor of that region. So there's no bit where the government would collect it. Amilin alayha is the only which would go towards the hukuma, and they would give that. Spoils of war, that's different. Yani after jihad, if there were spoils of war, then a fifth, then those are different, but there's nothing that would be given to the government. It's not a tax. A tax also is basically like, say, income tax, for instance. You are taxed on virtually everything you earn. Zakat is based on wealth and to avoid a person becoming greedy. And it's based on the capital that you have after the passing, the passing of a year. Once the year has passed, then it's on that and it's 2.5% of that.
So the zakat, it was not used for the salaries of the government officials at the time.
Those people who the government, the Islamic government, has tasked to collect the zakat and distribute the zakat. Only they could be given it, none of the other officers. Even the mujahideen, they would not get it, because even when it mentions fi sabilillah, the fi sabilillah is not for the mujahideen, that's for volunteer, unsolicited soldiers, or non-professional soldiers who joined a battle and then found themselves stuck behind enemy lines and they had no way to get back onto their lands, then they could collect zakat and get back into their lands. Soldiers who were part of the unit, they could not collect zakat because they're getting paid salary from the hukuma. So no, the hukuma does not collect and spend zakat on itself. It's not one of the 8 categories.
Yes, sir.
Can you elaborate a bit more on the calculation of zakat?
Okay, so the calculation of zakat is to determine one's assets. So assets can be all sorts, nowadays obviously women tend to have gold and silver. So if we're responsible for our wives' zakat, so it's gold and silver. Generally we have cash, bank accounts, current accounts, saving accounts, things like that. We may have pensions, so it'll be based on pensions. We may have stocks, we may have shares, we may have like e-wallets with cryptocurrency in it. These tends to be the main assets that we have. So what we would do is value the zakatable assets within them. So the gold itself is 100% zakatable. Cash is 100% zakatable. But a stock, what we'd have to do is determine the zakatable assets within the stock. So if a person had, for instance, shares in Apple, then not all of the Apple share is zakatable. Because some within Apple, if you looked at their end of year accounting sheets, you'll see that they've got liquidity in the form of cash. They've also got raw materials. They've also got products through the production line. They've also got products that are ready for sale. So those things are zakatable. But their factories are not zakatable. Their offices are not zakatable. Their other areas are not zakatable. So one would have to determine that. Let me give a very simple example. Let's just say there's a bakery and you've got shares in a bakery. So in the bakery, since we're eating cakes, in the bakery, flour, sugar, cream, all these raw materials that the person's got in the back, those you have to give zakat on. Any cake which is being formed, zakat is due. Any end products which are on the shelves ready to sell, zakat is due. There's no zakat due on the shop. There's no zakat due on the counter. There's no zakat due on any mixing machinery or cake making machinery. There's no zakat on doing that. So once you calculate what is zakatable, even within a pension fund, you have to find out what your pension fund is made of. Unfortunately, many of the time our pension funds have haram components as well, like gilts or bonds, which are basically loans to the government, which is riba. But once a person works out, okay, my pension is fully halal, and if it's fully halal, he then works out the components of it. You see, some they might invest in real estate, keep some in gold, keep some in silver, keep some in stocks, shares, whatever, and you work out your total zakatable assets. Once the total zakatable assets are worked out, you're doing 2.5% of that. There is some permissibility to remove any debts which are due in the coming Islamic lunar year. So one can deduct debts from there. It's not it's not encouraged. But if a person felt that if I don't remove those debts, I will fall into a financial difficulty, then he may remove one lunar year's worth of debts as well.
One further question.
Yeah, sure.
Does
Bismillah.
it apply on to assets that you have as well?
Would it apply to
Any assets that you have?
an example of what?
Example, so you've got a building there which is paid for and built an example value of about £200,000.
Is the purpose of that property to sell it, or is that property to lease out?
Asset. This is an asset of the company. An asset of the company.
Of a company. But what is it doing with that asset? We have to look at what the purpose of that asset is. If that asset is bought for its price to appreciate and then to sell on,
No. Just as an asset.
it's just there sort of as a warehouse for storage purposes.
For use of the company.
Yeah, then there's no zakat due on it. It's only if it's an asset in which you're for it to appreciate in order to sell it on, then it's zakatable. If on the other hand you've got it to lease out, so you've got rent income coming in, then there's no zakat due on the building. All you do is at the end of the year, you get your business account, get your savings account, and total it up, because some of the rent will still be there, some of the rent would have been used in the year.
Last question. Sorry, when do you actually calculate the year when you?
The year you've done.
The month of the
Okay, so what should happen is that when a person reaches, we spend, mashallah, when our children are young, alhamdulillah, like the young girl there, when they're from a very young age, we start talking about salah, we start talking about shahada, we start talking about hijab, obviously, if it's a young girl. But what we fail to talk about is, hajj. Maybe we speak about it from a story perspective. We don't really talk too much about siyam, but we most definitely don't talk about zakat. This is not educating our children at all. They know nothing about finance. About that, Sharia applies to your finance as well. They know nothing about riba, they know nothing about this, whatever. It's a strange thing that we do. So a child should know when they, before they're reaching baligh, what zakat is, what does it mean, whatever. Mashallah, we do give hadiyah to children. We put money in a savings account. There can be a child trust fund. Grandparents put money in, whatever. And slowly that's growing. It's growing. At the moment, obviously, the silver nisab is quite high. But about 3-4 years ago, it was £300, which is very low. Okay, £300 is hardly anything. So a young child at the age of 7, 8, 9 could have £300 in their bank account. Not a problem. When the child reaches bulugh, let's just say 14 years old, they reach bulugh. What should happen now is the father or the mother should help them determine the value of their assets. So if the value of their assets has hit nisab, then they should make a note of that date, whatever that date is, based on the lunar calendar, not on the Gregorian calendar. Because the lunar calendar is approximately 10 days shorter than the Gregorian calendar, which means obviously that if they base it on the Gregorian one, then the zakat date is earlier, but they just stuck it in the ground here. So once they've got that date, let's just say it's the 6th of Ramadan, or let's not use Ramadan, 6th of Dhul Qa'dah, 1446. They write it down. They don't give zakat yet. They wait for a year to pass. Once the year passes and the 6th of Dhul Qa'dah 1447 comes along, they do the same accounting again. Once they've checked all the accounting and they're still above Nisab, they take 2.5% out and give it in the form of zakat. Then every year, they will remind the child, or now the child is becoming older, 15, 16, 17, 18, now go check your zakat. So I would do that with my children even when they were sort of 18, 19 years old. I would say, go check your finances. What have you got? Give your zakat accordingly. Once this child who's now an adult is used to it in themselves, then you leave them to it, and then that's their responsibility to determine their own zakat. We arbitrarily fix a date. Everybody says, I give my zakat in Ramadan. Why? I don't know. It helps me remember. But it's not arbitrary. It's fixed based upon once these criteria are met. Right.
On that
Yeah.
topic,
So you and then the brother.
just on the same topic, jewelry worn, you give zakat on that as well?
Yeah. According to the Hanafiya, jewelry worn, you give zakat on that. According to the other madhahib, they say that if a woman is wearing jewelry, it's part of her clothing, then there's no zakat due upon it. We say there's an inherent value, and as there's an inherent value, you should give zakat on it. So the ihtiyat position, the precautionary position, is to give zakat. The brother then?
On the pensions,
Yes,
so you don't actually have access to the pension
that's correct.
because that's locked until you are.
That's correct.
Still have to pay the cost.
That's correct, because that locking is a choice of your own in the sense that you agreed to the terms that I will be giving 300, 200 pounds from my wage on a monthly basis. The employer says we'll be giving you 300 pounds from us, and then you get a choice of where that goes because you select your fund. You can have a choice to make your fund. So you can, and you always be careful because most of these work pension funds are not Sharia compliant. So because bonds and gilts are low risk, then you will find that 20, 30, 40% of your pension fund will be in bonds and gilts, which is not permissible. So try to find an alternative, which is Sharia compliant one. They will look at investing in sukuk instead of bonds. And then what you do is once that's done, then annually you will determine the value of it, and then you will give zakat accordingly.
And if you have just in shares, no bonds, no.
Yeah.
Then it's the other method that you described.
Yeah. So if you've got shares in your and the shares are there for the longevity, especially if it's a pension fund, then you will determine within the share what is zakat, because the total share isn't. If on the other hand you're buying and selling shares as a trader, so you buy them and then 6-7 weeks later you sell them, you're just kind of waiting for dips and troughs. Not dips and troughs because they're both negative. Troughs and peaks. Otherwise you're not going to make much money, are you? You can see I don't deal in stuff. Yeah, so you wait for troughs and peaks. No, yeah, troughs and peaks. So you're buying on a trough and selling on a peak, right? Then you would give zakat on the total value. Yeah, total value. That's the difference because you're now dealing with it as an asset. You're not looking at it that I own a piece of a business. Because I own a piece of a business, I'm only going to give zakat on the zakat of assets within that business. Now you actually own something which you're just buying and selling, you're trading in. But that's the slight difference.
Just one more question.
Yeah, no, it doesn't matter.
On the actual topic you talked about,
On
you
the
talked
heart.
about the heart swaying around.
Yes.
How do you anchor them?
You first make dua. Ya muqallibal qulub, thabbit qulubana ala dinik. So really, from that dua, you work out that it's only Allah who can anchor your heart. That's what you understand from that dua. Only Allah can do it. You can't strive to anchor your own heart. You can't work out or something to do it. You have to turn to Him. What He does tell us, obviously, is the more righteous acts we do, then that gives us that spiritual strength. The environment is key. Environment is key. A single sheep will get devoured by a wolf. And that's why, alhamdulillah, it's very heartwarming to see, mashallah, you've got a congregation here, you've got a community here. Alhamdulillah, may Allah give it strength. May it grow and may it be more successful the next time you come, inshallah. Is to, keep this together. This, the brotherhood, looking out for each other. This is the right environment. You get a chance, ulama come, they speak, we listen to Tilawatul Quran. It just gives you that boost, it gives you that spiritual energy. And that's when, mashallah, Hafsa was saying, the malaika gather around us, the rahmah descends upon us, we're doing dhikr of Allah, that gives, itminan in our hearts. All these things have a factor. But when we kind of get into the 9-5, when we get into the rat race, when we get into that kind of world, okay, then unfortunately the winds are around against us. We just don't see them because they're in the spiritual realm. If we could see in the spiritual realm, we'd see that our heart is getting tossed about all over the place. And that's why, sometimes we want to do this, then we want to do that, then we want to do this, then we want to do that, and there's no istiqamah. There's no steadfastness. We have a little boost in Ramadan, don't we? Everybody feels a boost in Ramadan. Why? Because the wind of Ramadan is picking you up. As soon as the wind of Ramadan drops, we drop. So we have to get ourselves in an environment where there's another wind which is picking us up. And knowing that we've got to, get on those winds and follow it that way.
So consistency.
Consistency, right environment, all these kind of things. When you're nurturing a young child, that there's got to be consistency, there's got to be the right environment. If a child is getting into trouble, what do we always say? Your friends are a problem for you. We know that as parents that the environment is having an impact. So we say change your friends. So Allah is saying the same thing. The environment of the Prophet in this particular hadith is saying the same thing. Now watch your environment and work towards that.
Brother Ahmed.
If you keep an eye on it.
Brother Ahmed.
Yeah, so for your I'm really beneficial. You spoke about the Khilafah, I think it's in the absence of the Khilafah, it's like leadership, almost facing lots of problems. There's disunity, endless wars, poverty, chaos. And it's really disheartening to see that our fellow Muslims being killed because of foreign agendas, essentially. And at a community level, what advice can we give in the sense that what can we do to aid the work with unity of the Muslim Ummah at macro level and at micro level? And what can we do to contribute towards the work for that is going to change the Ummah desperately needs, inshallah?
Yeah, first I would say is that remember, whatever happens in the world is by the will of Allah.
Of course.
We can never forget that. As much as we may sometimes, feel slightly despair and feel slightly lost that, when is the help of Allah going to come? Mata nasrullah, is to accept that this is by the will of Allah. That said, we're not just going to sit and say, that's it, khalas, so we're just going to leave this and be what we call qadariyah. That's not our aqidah. Our aqidah is Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah are practically minded and they do try to make change. We have to be realistic as well as to where our reach is, how powerful is our reach. So those of us who are community leaders, those who are scholars, those who've got a following, they've got a different agenda, they've got a different responsibility. But those of us, average people, a father, a husband, working in a community. So then we start bringing it at that community level. That's our agenda, that's our task. And we shouldn't look down upon it either. It's like, for example, in a Darul Uloom, you've got, Shaykh al-Hadith, and you've got the guy who's the caretaker. Now, the caretaker is as important in that role as the Shaykh al-Hadith is. If the caretaker isn't there, there's problems. If the Shaykh al-Hadith isn't there, there's problems. So that we're just content in where Allah has placed us. That this is where He's placed us, and this is where I'm going to excel. And this is where I'm going to work hard. So primarily, this is at this level. Of course, if we can assist financially, support financially, raise awareness, we should do that as well. It's not that we switch off. We can use the political avenues that we have, especially here in the UK, to challenge things of that nature. We're becoming quite a vocal voice. We have now, constituent people within our constituencies who are representing us as MPs, as councillors. So we can exhaust those opportunities as well. So nothing is at loss. But we look at what is within our grasp, within our power, and try to get that unity. There's ethnic issues amongst us. There's race issues amongst us. There's no doubt about it. So we need to kind of quash those. And inshallah, by the will of Allah, when He wills, success will come to this community. Hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. Say.
You follow local Saudi.
I feel that was not it.
Hold on.
I just can't escape it. So in a short answer, we should be following local signing. That's the short answer. Okay.
Going back to finance, some people are in property business to avoid the riba and things.
Yes.
If they're in buy-to-let business,
Yes.
is the property included in zakat?
No, because the property is his means of earnings. It's only he would add whatever remains. Let's just say he has a business account where all his earnings from his rent goes into, and obviously he spends from it to maintain the property. He would just add that to his other accounts on his nisab date and give zakat accordingly.
Okay. Relevant question also,
Yeah.
from the same party. What if the cash from the sale of a property becomes in bank before he buys the next one?
Then zakat is due.
when he's sitting in the bank.
when he's sitting in the bank.
Because between the property
It
stock.
doesn't matter because let's just say that person dies the next day, he was never going to buy that property, and that zakat came due upon him.
I mean, you had this
I
hand.
just wanted to go back to the pension one. I just wanted to check how can we ensure that the pension is Sharia compliant, and how do I calculate the zakat? As you said, we need to pay zakat.
Yeah. So in terms of Sharia compliant, if a person is not that confident about how to determine Sharia compliance, it's best to speak to a scholar, share the breakdown of his pension fund. Once he gives the breakdown of the pension fund, the Sharia scholar will say to him that that's a problem, this is a problem, that's a problem. Another easier option is being to speak to the provider and say, is my pension fund Sharia compliant? If they say, come again, then you know you have a problem because they've never heard of it. So then that's a telltale sign. So then you need to see that, okay, I want you to explore a Sharia compliant method. The pension provider would have the capacity to be able to locate that for you, and then they could offer it to you. If on the other hand they say, sorry, we can do, then it's up to you as an individual to get your own personal pension and remove that out of that and say, thank you very much, but I'm now going to provide seek my own personal pension. That is the easier option to find a Sharia compliant one. Once you've got the Sharia compliant,
Sorry, the problem I have is I don't have access to that, and I'm not allowed to touch it.
the actual structure of the pension fund.
Yeah, we're not allowed. So after, I think once you start paying, after 2 years, you're not allowed to touch it until the retirement.
Okay.
So how do I?
Supplement pension fund.
Yeah, it's the NHS. So
Okay. So if it's that type of fund and it's locked, what's it called, this pension fund? Is it it's a final salary pension or?
NHS.
Okay.
Yeah, employee pension. So
So we had, alhamdulillah, we created a Muslim network in Redbridge, and we queried because we weren't happy with where the funding, actually pension fund was going. It was going and invested in arms companies which were providing the bombs to Israel and things like that.
Yeah.
So what happened with that is that we got together and we said we don't wanna, because this isn't, something that we want to invest our money in. Alhamdulillah, if you can get a group together and approach them and find out where they're investing, thereafter put some pressure on them.
I'd be very surprised that within the NHS there's not a Muslim group.
Should be, you should speak to one on Users Dudwad, actually.
I'd be very surprised that there is no already kind of lobby group or advocacy group within the NHS that's challenging this. So explore that. But then you've got Hafiz Harun's number anyway. You can access me if you get stuck.
So we like to calculate the zakat.
Okay, so let's just say we've got a Sharia compliant pension fund. You now need to see what is zakatable within it.
Yes.
So if there's gold investment, silver investment, that's 100% zakatable. If it's real estate, that's 100% zakatable. If the real estate is only to take rent from, then it's only on the rent. So you need to find out how they've structured it. If there's stocks and shares, then there is a proxy that we use if you can't work out the total within the stocks and shares, which is now 30%. So you take 30% of the value and then 2.5% of that. So once you've got all that breakdown, then you total and then you determine your zakat accordingly.
So just two more questions then, Ayubai.
Right.
We're talking on the Day of Judgment. One of the people under the shades is a young person whose heart is attached to the masjid. We're trying to establish that. What advice would you give so that we can facilitate that young people whose heart is attached to the masjid?
I think it's very important the fact that we have masajids in areas that we've not had masajids before. They serve a general purpose, obviously, as an act of worship. That said, it's an obvious thing. But the more important thing you could say is that it becomes a hub for the community. And alhamdulillah, if this place didn't exist, would our paths have crossed? Probably not. Okay, they wouldn't have crossed because we'd all been in our own homes doing our own thing. So having these kind of places allows us to meet, see what the issues are within the community, have ulama coming here, talking to us, explaining things to us. So it's an absolutely essential thing. The youth are the way that's going to go forward. We're all getting old, right? We don't know how long we're left on this earth. And there'll come a time where, our job is done here, we move on. The next generation are the ones who are going to take, the community to the next level. So the young associated, we always find that within the young is the energy, like Hafiz Rizwan is full of energy. Right? It's the young that has energy. It's the young that has the drive. It's the young that has the ambition. It's naturally within that fitra. The elders, they can guide, they can share their experience, they can be the rudder, right? But the engine is always the young. Even when you look in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, it was the younger Sahaba that had the energy, the drive, the ambition, the goal about them. And it was the elder Sahaba that were the experienced. They provided stability, they provided the rudder to make sure things moved in the right way. That's always been the case in all things. You always find change takes place in the university campus. If you look across the last century, all change that's ever been demanded has come there. Why? Because the young have these ideas. They're very, open to new things. So inshallah, they are the future.
How do we deal with the distraction that we have, social media amongst the youngsters, especially?
We have to change that environment. Unfortunately, we've become a little bit lax with the way our children are growing up. And sometimes, giving them a phone means we can just keep them quiet. And that's opened Pandora's box. It's very difficult. I know it's a mixed metaphor, but it's very difficult to put the genie back into the lamp. Yeah, once the genie is out, it's very difficult. It's sometimes, unfortunately, I don't believe in lost cases. But in some cases, that's where we are, because we've when you expose somebody to some kind of part of the world that you're not supposed to. When we were young, our parents wouldn't even speak about adult things in front of us. They'd say, leave the room. So we were forced to go out of the room, and then they talk about, this chachi, this happened, now. We would never even know what's going on in the world. We're so oblivious to it, even when we were like 14, 15 years old. So only later we became aware of things and go, all right, okay. And that's because our parents censored us. And of course, on our side, we accepted that censorship. Now with the ideas that are being brought, censorship is wrong, self-determination, you can determine everything now. There's something which is ridiculous you can determine, something which goes against biology you can determine, which was unheard of. So these are we're in trying times. And hence, even more so, it's never mind the winds. In the hadith we shared with you earlier, there's gale force winds now. There's a storm blowing. Right? It's a storm blowing. So that means even more so we need to hunker down. Even more so we need to make sure that we're, steadfast. So that means as the wind blows, then, when you've got a coat on and the wind is light, you keep it light. When the wind gets heavy, you tighten the coat, don't you, to stop the wind from affecting you. So in the same here, when we feel the storm, we're supposed to tighten and come together more. So ta'aleem in the house, making sure you're there for your children, giving them some quality time, giving them something in exchange of that. Okay? Threatening them, becoming violent, these things won't help. In fact, you push the child further away.
One more question, Samson.
I have two questions on witr. So I know witr is supposed to be the last prayer.
Yes.
The Tarawih.
Yes.
Pray the witr.
Yes.
But is it okay to pray the witr? And if my intention, whether it is come out or do, is or not, pray to him to pray on, can I still do that?
You can still do that. The only reason why we pray witr early is because we're weak. Okay, because witr according to Ahnaf is wajib. So what we're supposed to do is pray witr at the last part of the night. But if we feel it, there's no chance I'm getting up. Okay, once I put my head on the pillow, I'm out. So we don't want to miss witr. So we pray out witr. But yes, even if a person then did say, okay, I'll pray now, but inshallah, if Allah gives tawfiq, I'll get up for my tahajjud. And rightly so, one could do that.
I could do it regularly.
You could do it regularly, yes. Yeah.
And then there's a second opinion where some say that pay the witr, but when the imam says taslim salaam alaykum, you get up and pray extra. Is that really allowed? Because the intention is going to be different.
Not really, because you've now turned into a 4 rakat, haven't you? So no, you would finish the odd number of prayer with the imam, and then like you said, if you can get up earlier, then you do your tahajjud early. If not, then at least you've done your witr, which according to Ahnaf is wajib.
Then you don't repeat the witr.
It becomes nafal, isn't it?
That's right. Well, you become two units of two in terms of nafal there. There's Hafiz in his one, and it would be disrespectful for Hafiz. Should we leave him out? I think we should have a vote. Anybody who thinks that Hafiz Rizwan should ask the question, put your hands up. Anybody who thinks that Hafiz Rizwan should not ask the question, put both your hands up. The people have spoken, Hafiz.
question I'm going to ask, people might want to know.
Obviously, you're going to say that. Forever the salesman.
Go for it. What's that? If you pay your zakat late,
No, don't bother asking. Come on, this one. It's not happens this one and I will go way back before you think I'm being very rude to you. Sorry?
sinful for paying your zakat late.
How late is late is what?
Let's say a couple of days over.
No. As long as you calculate it on the Nisab date, you may, for whatever reason, because it's let's just say it's Ramadan, and you're expecting a few more people to come to the masjid for collections and whatever. You think, you know what, I'm going to share it out instead of giving a lump sum to this person. What I'm going to do is give 300 to him, even though my zakat is, I think your zakat is usually about 2.5 grand. Is it 3 grand? Yeah. So then you can share it out. You see, you don't want to put a lump sum of 3 grand on someone's rumbal. They're going to think, this one happens.
For me.
So, yeah, last one.
This is what going back about the funding.
Sorry?
Like people make intention for doing good deeds, like contributing to the mosque fund.
Ji.
And then, even though they made a niyat, they made the intention,
Ji.
but then they shift. Of course, tawakkal to Allah, trying to get there. I'm having the same challenge in all aspects of my life.
Ji.
I make a decision,
Yeah.
and then I suffer from doubts.
Yeah.
I want to hear from you about how to remain steadfast on after making the niyat.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do.
So the first thing is that when Allah gives you tawfiq to make a niyyah, then you get ajr for that. Yeah, Allah said that He will reward you for making a good niyyah, even if you don't act on it. However, what might be is the pause between, or the gap between your niyyah and the action. So maybe when you make niyyah, do the action immediately. Don't give yourself time to back out of it, because shaitan will cause you to back out. I've known many people come to me and say, Musa, make dua for me. I said, inshallah, I will do. There's some parishani on me, there's some issue on me. And you know what, inshallah, if this parishani goes, I'm willing to, cover the carpets in the masjid. So I said, mashallah, brother, that's very good. Right? What happens is that parishani does go away. And then that brother's avoiding me. And that's the danger. Then the parishani is going to come back.
Yeah.
And this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to pull a swift on Allah. And you can't pull a swift on Allah. He controls all your life. So rather, when that parishani comes and you do make that niyyah that I'm going to do this, if this goes, then give it.
You don't procrastinate.
Yeah, don't procrastinate. Just do it. As I say, we kind of overanalyze things, we overthink things, just do it. The time of the past, there were men of action. And there were men of action, spoke little, but you knew what they were about. Muslim, mashallah, we're big theorists, we draw diagrams, we analyze it, explore the different philosophies and the underlying issues, and then we say, okay, let's have some sleep. That's that problem. Should we not have this?
For tahajjud salah, a lot of our local massages, they do it in congregation now. Is it better to do it on your own or join the congregation?
It's better to do it on your own. You see, the issue of riya in salah is also the issue of riya in any act of worship. If you do riya, show off in any act of worship, then you are sharing that act of worship with the people. If you do something in seclusion, you're doing it solely for the sake of Allah, because nobody's saying shabash. Yeah? Because nobody knows. That's why you notice that the fard salah is prayed in Jamaat, and the sunnah, as the Prophet ﷺ used to say, pray them in home. And pray them at home. Why? Because the fard is dictated by the Imam. He's not gonna, we might think, that brother's watching, I'm gonna really lengthen my ruku. They're gonna say, mashallah, look at Mufti's ruku, he hasn't even moved. Wow, he's a proper Buzurg. So what have I done then? I have now ascribed partners in my salah. Fard is dictated by the Imam. So you can't lengthen the ruku. You stay as long as he stays in ruku. You stay in sajda as long as he stays in the sajda. But when it's your own salah, now do it at home. You can spend all night praying. Only Allah is your witness, and inshallah you'll be protected from that. So when we're doing anything apart from those which have been, stipulated, I was wondering why you were showing me that. When we do those things which were stipulated within the deen, okay, then those which are stipulated, we can do them in public and we're safe. Anything which aren't, we should avoid. So according to Ahnaf, we don't do that. These are stipulated, we do that, pray them out. On that note, because I can see, we need to move on. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
You're going to start for 2 days. Like, I start your fucking maybe there. Yep. One start to do. Yep. The second part to do. Yep. I get like that. One day. Can they make it cut out? Day before eat. They're gonna have one day with